want to start off just by introducing myself. One of the things that we like to do in the Native culture is to introduce ourselves in our native language, and to let you know who we are. So I'll start off by saying Mishiho Chokman. So Chipo at Miko Thomas. Kosteninchi Saho Chipo at Landa Lakes Ako. Aminti Tupelo. Iksa Chokachafa. Chickasaw Saya, which is my introduction to you, telling you about my clan, as well as where my people are from. We're from the Tupelo area in Oklahoma, and I'm from the Chickasaw tribe. Now, one of the things I thought about when I was asked to join here today was I was going to share a little bit about my time in the Navy and what it means to be a warrior, because I'm a part of the Warrior Society. So I thought I would give a good background, a little bit about my tribe, as to who we are and sort of how we approach things. My tribe is a Chickasaw, and we're originally from Alabama and Mississippi. But during the Relocation Act of the 1830s, we were removed from the southeastern United States over into Oklahoma. And there in Oklahoma, we restructured our society and our groups once again. And but we never lost like that connection that we had, not only to the land, but also to our traditional lands back in Mississippi and Alabama. And so when we got to Oklahoma, we started renaming like a lot of our places that we had left behind. So when you come into Oklahoma, you'll find a lot of towns that seem like duplicates in some ways to towns in Alabama and Mississippi, because we just started renaming them after locations that were very familiar to us. And a typical thing that someone who is traditionally Chickasaw does every morning is they sort of like reignite that connection they have to the land. And we do that usually by doing so by prayer, often in the form of song, and also the sprinkling of tobacco in order to give back to the land for this new day that we've been given. And growing up, TwoSpirit is sort of like an interesting thing. For those who don't know what TwoSpirit means, it's relatively a recent term. Our traditional term, what we used to say is hatekeklana, and hatekeklana actually has a connotation of being mixed. It's the idea of being mixed, masculine and feminine together. So when you say hatekeklana, it means it's mixed. But TwoSpirit came about at a gathering of LGBT Native Americans who came together, and they wanted to have something that we could all use, not just specific tribal terms, but something that that we, as sort of like a pan-Indian sort of Indian, which is an interesting term that we often refer to ourselves, but or we did back then. But so they determined to use the word TwoSpirit, which comes a little bit from the Anishinabe's view of everyone's spirit being masculine and being feminine. And growing up in Oklahoma, in a very small town, because I always lived on native land, so we lived on Chickasaw land growing up. So you would think that there would be like, you always have this idea that small towns are very close-minded and are sort of like unwilling to grasp things like the difference in gender and gender roles and things like that. For the large part of my experience, that wasn't the case, just because growing up, when we did ceremonial pieces, one of the things that we did was preparation for Stomp Dance and for ceremonies. I often found myself doing these parts that were actually women's roles, and I had no idea at the time, and no one ever stopped me or told me not to do it. So I continued to do it, and it only became evident later on when one of my aunts told me that what I was doing was actually what women were supposed to do. And I had been doing it since I was like very young, and I had no idea. But you know, it brings up a question that we often ask is, what is a warrior in today's sense? Because in the old days, when you had war, you would go out and you would fight and you would protect your territory, right? And protect your people. And and that's all changed now because you don't go out and fight in your community, right? So our next step for that was is the military. So a lot of times, in order to join our warrior society, you have to join the military in some way. And so I joined the military and I went and I fought in Desert Storm, which was really unique for me because of the fact that I'd been sort of like a very out person. Everyone who saw me sort of knew I had long hair. I dressed very outlandishly to go along with it. So people sort of knew, but during that time I had to sort of like close it all off and just be sort of like that good soldier. And so we went over and we had a good time. Actually, it was during Desert Storm, and I didn't really see a lot of fighting. I saw a lot of missiles. When we were in Kuwait, there was a lot of Scud missiles that were flying overhead, and there was always a potential of of them having gas inside them, but none of that actually happened. Most of the time, it was just Scud missiles, and they were just there to be destructive, but they didn't actually have any sort of poisonous gases attached to them, which was good for Kuwait and good for the military. And then I came back, and that question still remained: what is it to really be a warrior? What does it mean to be a warrior in a contemporary sense? And and while I had been away, I guess a lot of things had changed. Um, because I remember when I was very young, we used to go to these things called powwows. And powwows are these large gatherings where Native people get together and sometimes they compete in dance categories and other things, but it's usually these large dances. And when I was younger, I remember going to one of the largest ones at that time was called Red Earth, and it was in Oklahoma City. And we would go and to be quite frank, I never felt really very welcome there because even though Native people have long had Two-Spirit people in their societies, things have changed, especially with Christianization. It was a different story, and so me and my friends, we would often go and feel rather excluded from there, even though we were always a part of the committee in some ways and helping to put it on. And so we went away from that, always feeling like this neglected piece to us. And so when I came to San Francisco, to California, we decided to create a powwow. Um, and we wanted to create a powwow and make sure that it was welcoming and embracing of all people. So we decided to put it on, and we decided to call it just what it is, a Two-Spirit Powwow. And we invited the whole community, everybody. It didn't matter if you were in the LGBT spectrum or you were just anything. We didn't care. We said, whatever you are, please come. We saw it as like a large siblinghood, not a brotherhood, not a sisterhood, a siblinghood, because we're all related in some ways, which is sort of like a tribal speak for us, because whenever we talk about like something like Iksa or our clans, usually that translates to being from the same house or from the same home. And so we wanted people to come into our community and feel that presence of being in one house, being in that one home. So we put it together, and we thought that we would get like a very small audience. We thought maybe we would get like maybe 200 to 250 people. But instead, what happened was when everybody came together, there was 500 people. And we said, oh, well, this is great. We're glad the community came out. We're going to expand it. So the next year, we got something that could fit like 500 people, and 1,000 people showed up. So the next year, we went larger. And before long, we found ourselves at a place here in San Francisco called Fort Mason, which could fit thousands of people. And so now our powwow averages anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people, which is incredible. But the most incredible part of it is that we're a very welcoming venue, and like I said, we ask everybody to come and everybody to enjoy. We're not the largest powwow in the nation, but we're large enough that from the very start, we always have something we call grand entry, and that again is where the warriors sort of take part. The warriors bring in the flags and our staffs, our eagle staffs, into the arena before the dance begins, and we bring that in. And so we wanted to make a statement, and so we brought in the rainbow flag, and we said, this is our statement. We're going to bring in the rainbow flag, meaning that this is open for all people. And we brought in that rainbow flag, and as we did so, it caught the attention of many others. And before long, here in the Bay Area, all of a sudden, other places were carrying in their rainbow flag into Grand Entry. And then about 2 years later, the largest powwow in the world in Santa Fe, called the Gathering of Nations, carried in the rainbow flag. Not only has it carried in the rainbow flag, but now for the last 2 years, it's had a Two-Spirit contingent, meaning that not only are Two-Spirits welcome in this circle, but they're welcome to bring in the flags and bring in all the participants into the arena, which is a great change. And so that's why when I think of like these terms of warriors, sometimes I say to myself that my time being over in Kuwait, where I basically did very little, means less than somebody who's a warrior who can actually move about a social change. And that is one social change that I'm very happy that I was able to contribute to in forming this Two-Spirit Powwow. And so that's why I think of like so many of the people who have shared today as being in that same category, whether you call it warrior or you call it healer. There are many different ways of referring to it. But I think that one of the things about it is that sometimes when you start something, even though it's relatively small, it has so much potential to continue to grow and expand. And it's even more so when that challenge is set before everybody, and it basically says I'm challenging you to be a part of us, to be a part of our community, and it's in that way that I think things can really blossom and make good things in the world. Now, we don't have much time, so I'm going to go ahead and close out with a blessing, if you don't mind. In the spirit of truth, reciprocity, and respect, we'd like to take the time to honor the original caretakers of the land that we currently stand upon. We'd like to acknowledge all those nations, indigenous and non, that live, work, and play on this land. We're grateful for each and every day to be a healing people, a warrior. And for those of us that walk a really clear path, let us be the strength for those people and those lands that still need healing. Let us be grateful today, but know that tomorrow we can achieve more. May we make all things good. Chukmashke.